Welcome back, Wolfpack Rollers here, and this is how to use Lugia. So Lugia, another stupidly tanky legendary Pokemon that we've seen quite a few of these, but it's like Suicune in that way that we just have a very high amount of hit points, very high amount of defense, a super duper amount of special defense. Like special, you don't have to worry. Like super effective hits don't even threaten you that much, and that's just crazy. And somehow 110 base speed. So for legendary Pokemon, very good stat distribution, and then we can just kind of see, well, we're not going to be too offensive, so we can go for some tanky stall aspects, kind of like Suicune, and that's what we're pretty much going to be playing off of, just being tanky and having a lot of hit point and defensive bulk. Look at its typing, Psychic Flying typing. Unfortunately, this is going to reduce a lot of Lugia's power though, because while I said that super effective hits don't really bother you as much, they're still not nice to deal with. So we have Electric, Ice, Dark, Ghost, and Rock. That's just a lot of things that you don't want to deal with. Like the Psychic typing brings those Ghost and Dark weaknesses, the Flying brings Electric, Ice, and Rock, and you don't really get too many weaknesses. You have a nice four times resist to fighting, but that's kind of it. Ground immunity, Grass, Psychic. It's not like the biggest things that you can resist, and overall compared to just the monotyping of Water for Suicune, you aren't as well off as a tank. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we can see that Lugia can run as a Rest Sleep Talk Pokemon, and it's going to be very strong like that. That we just Calm Mind, and then our special defense goes off the charts. Our hit points and defense being max means we're barely going to be taking any damage from anything. Leftovers is going to heal up a lot from that. And then the idea is just Calm Mind, rest when you need to, and even with that 110 base speed, you're still outspeeding a lot of Pokemon that are other really tanky Pokemon that you want to set up against, even without any speed investment, so that's going to be really nice right there. And then you just kind of do whatever. Now, as for the last move, it's really interesting because Surf, you can get Water Absorb, you can get Rain Dish, whatever. You don't have access to Scald, you don't have access to Air Slash. So really you don't have like a lot of really good stab options because you can get immune by Dark type with Psychic or any kind of move like that. So really I was thinking we can look at Surf just because it's going to have high base power and high amount of PP, or Ice Beam for the coverage, less PP, chance to freeze, I wouldn't really rely on that. But we're going to just kind of go for the +5, +6, hope we don't get completely walled out by something that's super defensive, and just go for it. That, you know, with the 90 base special attack, our Calm Minds aren't going to do a huge amount, but we are still just so tanky that a very easy setup is going to be given to us. And then we can also maybe just like look for some other coverage. Lugia gets quite a few like weird extra coverage moves that we'll talk about from move tutors. So I mean, you can just have a Chesto Berry instead, and you just try to get as many Calm Minds before having to rest again. Like you probably could get 3 Calm Minds off, maybe even 4 before like you have to rest for that second time, depending on what you're going up against, and that could be very solid right there. The reason why you want to rest is because if you get toxic, if you get burned, it takes away a lot of your tankiness, because that percent health is going to be doing almost as much damage as your opponent is doing to you with just direct attacks. But if you don't mind that, then we can still look at some really good damage options at Aeroblast and Psyshock. You can have Aeroblast and Psyshock if you're running this set as well, that you can really open up. So Psyshock is going to be pretty powerful because it hits based on defense, not special defense, so you can't get special defensive walled as easily. And then Aeroblast, it's just a high damage, stab, critical, crazy move that you can use. Now this is just going to be quick sustain, that instead of resting and having to worry about that gamble, set up Calm Minds, go for that Roost. If you get toxic, you just kind of have to suck it up, maybe have some kind of Heal Bell or Cleric on your team, and then you just go for Aeroblast and Psyshock. So the idea is set up and try to win. And that's kind of where Lugia becomes one-dimensional, because it's really just going to be able to do that you go for those Calm Minds, you try to be a stupid tanky Pokemon, and then you hope for the best. And then you can just go like the full-on stall variant, where you just set up a substitute, go for Toxic, go for Roost, Ice Beam when necessary. Hopefully that Lumberry will keep you off of the status just for an extra turn if your opponent tries to dedicate some status to you. But yeah, you're not like a super offensive Pokemon. When you look at Lugia, you would think that, but it's actually just a very bulky Pokemon that you're going to be playing like that. And then in doubles, Lugia, it gets Tailwind, it's a flying Pokemon, and here's where I was thinking maybe we can try to push those offensive aspects of Lugia, set up a Tailwind, max out the hit points, still going to be very tanky, and now we just have our Tailwind support that's also dealing a decent amount of damage. 90 base special attack isn't a lot, so we're just kind of like Aeroblast going for coverage with Ice Beam and Psyshock, and just hoping that, you know, if our allied Pokemon that's now getting Tailwind boosted, very heavy hitter, now we can just really use Lugia to help for some follow-ups, just double focus down one Pokemon, that Pokemon's getting knocked out, and then they just have to deal with it while you have a lot of speed priority from the Tailwind. As for item, Citrus Berry works out. Life Orb, you can even run a Life Orb if you just want to try to push as much damage as possible, and that's kind of it. So Lugia is going to either go for those sustain options, try to be some kind of stall, and I was even trying to toy around with the idea of an Assault Vest. Now this gets really interesting because as I mentioned earlier, Lugia gets some weird tutor moves like Giga Drain. Giga Drain is a move tutor for Lugia. So, like if you have Assault Vest, then you might be able to get enough tankiness, even though it's only equivalent to 1 Calm Mind. You might get enough tankiness where, 1 or 2 Charge Beams, you go for that +1, and then you just use Giga Drain. And hopefully they don't resist the Giga Drain, so now we're getting that health support back. So we go like Charge Beam, hope for the double boost, Giga Drain, Charge Beam, Giga Drain. And before we know it, we're at like a really good amount of special attack. We're still a very tanky Pokemon. We have Sustain coming off that Giga Drain to a decent degree. And then we just go for Aeroblast and Earth Power to round out our coverage. And this is great coverage right here that we hit quite a bit. And we also do have our own little thing going on. It does take a bit to set up. And also if you're using Lugia, other legendaries are allowed, so it's going to be tougher to set up against legendaries. So maybe you have to like find that in, dedicate some team support for Lugia. But this could have some very snowballing potential, and that might be what your team is looking for. As for the ability, Multiscale. Pokemon's at full HP, damage taken is half. If you get a hold of really good Multiscale Lugia, that's going to be invaluable, especially on like one of these rest talk sets, because that first hit means nothing. So like the turn you rest, you kind of don't have to worry about that afterwards. And even like with a Chesto set, even if you're not doing rest talk, that first turn after rest, you're still safe. So like the first turn doesn't really matter. So now you don't have to worry about 2 turns of being asleep. And if you have +2 or 3 on a Calm Mind, you're still going to be able to wake up, maybe even get some damage in before you have to rest again. So Lugia can really stall out well with the Multiscale. It is an exclusive Pokemon. It's not 6th Gen legal, so if the tournament calls for 6th Gen caught Pokemon, you're only going to have a Pressure Lugia from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And that's kind of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's how we use Lugia in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and I hope you all have a nice day.